Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we're taking a super fascinating look at what happens when workplace dynamics just completely break down at the absolute highest levels of fame, scrutiny, and pressure. We're examining the legendary 30-year rift between two undeniable titans of Bollywood cinema, Sunny Deol and Shah Rukh Khan. But, we aren't looking at this as just some piece of celebrity gossip. Instead, we're going to use this as a real case study in high-stakes workplace psychology, ego, and the profound professional insecurities that can impact absolutely any collaborative environment. And that holds true whether you're on a multi-million-dollar movie set or just sitting in your standard corporate office.
Okay, let's dive right into this. And, well, we're actually going to start right at the end of the story. In 2023, massive headlines were made across the global entertainment world when a multi-decade celebrity fallout officially concluded with a very public, incredibly warm reconciliation between these two stars. It ended simply and beautifully with a hug. But to really understand the gravity of that moment and why it captivated so many millions of people, we have to understand the immense weight of the time that had passed between the initial inciting incident and that final peaceful resolution.
Really think about the sheer scale of this timeline for a second. It kicks off all the way back in 1993, which marks the filming of the movie Dar and the exact starting point of the rift. And then it stretches all the way to 2023, the year of their warm public reconciliation. That is a 30-year gap. Just pause and think about that in the context of your own life or your own career. Imagine 3 full decades of professional estrangement from a peer. This wasn't just some brief disagreement over an email, right? It was a generational divide between two major figures operating in the exact same industry, often running in the exact same circles. The sheer scale of this timeline is what gives this whole feud its immense narrative weight.
Part 1. The 1993 Dar Rift.
To understand how such a massive divide opened up in the first place, we've got to flashback to 1993. And as we look at this period, I really want you to treat this glamorous movie set not just as a piece of cinema history, but as a high-pressure office environment. It was a shared workspace where professional relationships completely broke down under intense stress. The workspace we're talking about was the set of Dar. It was a psychological thriller that became an absolute, iconic landmark in Hindi cinema. It was incredibly successful and culturally significant, but behind the scenes, that set was an absolute pressure cooker. The immense success of the final product completely masked a multi-year reality check about how profoundly difficult it can be for two highly driven, deeply invested professionals to collaborate. So, what actually went down? Well, if we look at the facts impartially, the origins of the fallout were rooted in your classic workplace disputes. First, there were severe creative differences regarding the overall direction of the project. Second, there were major disputes over their respective roles in the film and exactly how those roles were being showcased. And third, you have to remember, this friction occurred during their younger career stages. That is a highly vulnerable time when professionals are often fiercely trying to establish their standing and prove their worth. And to be clear, we aren't taking sides here, neither Doyle's nor Khan's. The reality is simply that two ambitious professionals had fundamentally different views on their shared project, and that led to a profound, seemingly irreparable breakdown in communication.
Part 2. The role of insecurity. Now, what's really interesting here is our shift from those specific historical events to a deeper psychological analysis. We're moving entirely away from the Bollywood gossip, and we're focusing strictly on the underlying human behavior to ask, why do co-stars actually clash? It's so easy to look at larger-than-life superstars and just assume their problems are completely unrelatable to the rest of us. But if you strip away the fame, strip away the wealth and the cameras, you are literally just left with coworkers. Coworkers who are struggling with completely universal workplace dynamics and egos. They're navigating delicate power structures, personal ambitions, and creative control, all while trapped in a tight, high-stress environment with strict deadlines. Sounds a bit like a regular Tuesday at the office, doesn't it?
Recently, Sunny Deol sat down for an interview with Shubhankar Mishra and offered a fascinating, very candid psychological breakdown of why these clashes happen. Deol points out that performers are ultimately limited to the scope of the characters they're assigned to play. From there, severe misunderstandings naturally arise when actors begin comparing their roles against one another. You start looking at what your colleague is doing rather than focusing on your own output. Ultimately, it's this creeping professional insecurity that inevitably drives these toxic, completely unnecessary conflicts on set. And this brilliantly illustrates his point. Deol summed it up with this deeply poignant realization. Because we can only be the character we are, we cannot be anything beyond that. It perfectly highlights the strict limitations placed on creative professionals. Think about it. In any job, when you're boxed into a specific role or a specific title, but you have larger overarching ambitions, friction is practically guaranteed.
The gap between what you are assigned to do and what you inherently want to do can breed deep resentment. It makes you hypersensitive to the successes or perceived advantages of your peers.
Deal made a really raw admission regarding this insecurity too. While he clarified that he doesn't consider himself an insecure person by nature, he openly acknowledged that insecurity is a powerful force that makes actors do totally unnecessary things. As he noted, it ruins the vibes, creating a thick negative atmosphere where things happen that simply have no logical reason to happen. He starkly refers to this dynamic as the harsh reality of filmmaking. And honestly, it's a remarkably honest assessment of how one individual's personal insecurities can rapidly pollute an entire team's working environment, halting productivity and just completely destroying morale.
Let's move to part 3, colleagues, not enemies. Let's see how this builds into Deol's mature, modern-day reflections on the whole film industry ecosystem. Because after 30 years, the lens through which he views that 1993 conflict has shifted dramatically, and it highlights a major public misconception. For 3 whole decades, the media dramatically framed these two men as bitter, blood-feud personal enemies. But today, Deol holds a highly relatable, grounded view. He doesn't see it as a story of enemies at all anymore. He views it simply as 2 professional colleagues functioning in a shared workspace who just didn't get along. The relationship was always professional in nature, rather than deeply personal.
This shift in perspective is perfectly captured in a mixed Hindi-English quote from the actor. Reflecting on the past, he said, "To us waqt bhi kahin dushman to nahi the." Dost means we're all colleagues. Translating that sentiment to English, he's basically saying that even back then, they were never truly enemies. While they might not have been close friends, they were all fundamentally colleagues. This captures a profound authenticity. It's the realization of a seasoned professional looking back through the wisdom of time and recognizing that they were really just 2 guys navigating a highly complex, fiercely competitive industry together. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to turn the focus back to you for a second. Ask yourself, are your workplace rivals personal enemies or just complicated colleagues? The story of Sunny Deol and Shah Rukh Khan shows us that even a 30-year feud, born in the intense pressure cooker of a multi-million-dollar film set, was ultimately just a conflict between 2 colleagues struggling with the limitations of their roles and the immense insecurities of their profession. Next time you face friction at work, maybe take a step back and ask yourself, are you letting professional insecurity create a personal enemy out of what is really just a complicated colleague? Thanks so much for joining me as we unpacked this incredible story today, and keep learning.